an effort to further restore ties, India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri is in Beijing, where he met Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, with talks focusing on implementing the consensus on the Ladakh border issue, strengthening bilateral dialogue and enhancing political, economic and people-to-people relations. While the Chinese Foreign Ministry highlighted the alignment of bilateral ties with the interests of two nations, Misri acknowledged the progress made under the Kazan consensus and underlined India's commitment to resolving the differences and promoting practical cooperation.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri in Beijing on Monday, an indication that China and India are restoring a mechanism to enhance dialogue and work on specific issues. The resumption of this bilateral mechanism flows from the agreement at the leadership level to discuss the next steps for India-China relations, including the political, economic and people-to-people domains.
当然是我们在龙年接待的最后一批客人。
You are the last delegation of foreign guests we are receiving, but I believe that they will signal a new beginning. Welcome again. I wish you success in your consultation. I believe that you and your counterpart will reach common understandings which will help recover and improve our bilateral ties.
We are on our way to stabilizing the relationship. I cannot overemphasize the importance of communications between our two countries, and I would like to specifically record the contribution that you personally have made in maintaining these communications at various levels between our two leaderships.
Wang Yi said that China and India should seize the opportunity to move towards each other and achieve mutual success, rather than be suspicious, alienate, and consume each other. Vikram Misri agreed that the two countries should properly manage and resolve differences and promote the restart of practical cooperation in various fields. He said that India is willing to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations and to fully support China's work as the SCO chair. Data shows that China overtook the U.S. as India's top trading partner in the 2024 fiscal year, with the value of bilateral trade reaching over $118 billion. Liu Jiaxin from CGTN for NDTV in Beijing.
Well, that was a report from CGTN. We are joined at this hour from Beijing by Einar Tangen, who's the chairman of Asia Narratives. It's a channel based out of Beijing. And we are also joined by Professor Avinash Godbole. He is a China expert. Well, I'll start my discussion with Mr. Tangen. Given that both sides are, increasing talks and working on restoring trust, what do you think is the next phase in this relationship?
Thank you for having me. I think putting this in perspective, you have two of the largest countries in the world who are neighbors. They have an unresolved border area, and they also, China's growth has in many ways been spreading into areas that were traditionally areas of influence by India. So these neighbors have to come together if there's going to be an Asian century. And going next is trying to figure out exactly how each feels about the future. Economically, obviously, as you said in the report earlier, China has become the #1 trade partner for India, but it has to go both ways. And right now, India is looking for ways to increase its trade with China, and I think that has to be something that happens in the future, as well as settling this idea that they are rivals. There should be more cooperation.
Mr. Godbole, Vikram Misri had been an ambassador to China. How easy would it be to have him do these negotiations?
It will be difficult. Negotiating with Chinese is not easy, irrespective of where you have been. But the vocabulary of Chinese diplomacy, Mr. Misri would be perfectly familiar. I'm only curious about the timing of this event happening today, because this week is supposed to be a holiday week in China, given the New Year is around the corner. Everything else is shut. So this must be a very quickly planned meeting with some time horizon action there. But I understand it's not easy to negotiate with China at any stage. Now, if they had planned this well in advance, I think we are at the 12th week of the agreement on de-escalation. So they would have set certain guidelines on where we are supposed to have been. But to my knowledge, the de-induction of troops, as was expected, has not even begun as yet. So we have to see what signals and what statements we have from our government at the end of the day, or maybe by afternoon tomorrow, about what transpired exactly in Beijing.
Mr. Tangen, would you like to remark on the timing of the event?
Well, I think the elephant in the room is somebody named Donald Trump. Obviously, his moves to say he wants to take over the Panama Canal, Canada, and also Greenland, as well as, even today, his decision to play hardball with Colombia. I think this has had some repercussions. There's some feeling among China experts that India suspects that the U.S. Interfered in the president and the prime minister elections, and that they had some hand in Bangladesh. This has led to some bad feelings between Washington and New Delhi. The fact that India has opened its ports to Russian shadow tankers and is the #1 buyer of oil, and has been supplying Russia with things that the U.S. sees as sensitive. I'm not saying that India is walking away from the U.S. relations, but I think it's making it clear that India is an independent country and will make its own decisions about who it deals with. Washington, of course, was very anxious to have India act as a doorstop to China. I think it's better for those two countries to work together rather than be a divide and conquer part of some sort of colonial past plan.
Mr. Godbole, Trump will insist India to be more proactive inside Quad, giving it a more military bent. How will this impact ties with Beijing?
Well, our ties with Beijing are already at a low. And if you saw the press release from the government of India, it had focused on 3 specific issues: economic, political, and people-to-people exchanges. So trade balance is an issue, and trade and investment, that barriers that India had put after the crisis in 2020, that would have been discussed. Second is the issue of resumption of bilateral flights. We don't have bilateral flights between India and China since 2020. It stopped during COVID, but the restoration never happened because of the bilateral border crisis being at the center of the relations. And the third is people-to-people relations, including the status of students, the status of social interaction of exchanges between think tanks and academia and industries. Visa issuance has been at all-time low. So I believe that is also kind of is to be restored. And the fourth point would be media. Accreditation of Indian media and Chinese media had been revoked after the 2020 crisis again, and on the reporting of COVID by some of the Indian media, and I'm sure that issue also would have been discussed. So yes, Trump will be a huge shadow, but it will take a Herculean effort to restore India-China relations trust. This is also supposed to be the year of the 75th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations, and we'll have to see what outcome this highlights on this issue.
Mr. Tangen, could China's largest dam project on the Brahmaputra threaten India's security and become another contentious point?
Well, I'm glad you raised that. I mean, there are a couple of misconceptions. The amount of water that flows from China into that area, by the Indian government's estimate, was less than 7%. As we all know, that as warm air rises against cold mountains, it sheds all of its or most of its water. So, the water is really on the Indian side. India had planned in 2017 the Siang Upper Multi-Purpose Project Reservoir, which is a dam, and be India's largest water electricity project. China in 2021 responded with a dam on its side of the border. The real issue, though, is that they have to work together in terms of sharing information, because this has a huge impact on Bangladesh. They get 65% of their water from this waterway, and the silt that washes downstream is an important nutrient for all the farms that are in that delta region.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Tangen and Mr. Godbole, for joining me on the broadcast this evening.